My future forecast is like the clouds of shame are parting and we have a bright and bisexual future ahead of us.
What else does a bisexual future look like?
Well, when we look at the data, there are a quarter of Gen Zers who are identifying now as LGBTQ. That tells me that we're finally starting to see sexuality on a spectrum and to stop thinking in such binary terms, which unlocks so many possibilities. I think the future is queer.
Yeah. All right, what else is in the future?
Well, I mean, where do we go from here? We can talk about teledildonics. We can talk about virtual reality pornography.
Tell me what you think of AI chatbot girlfriends and why does it seem only men seek them out?
I have mixed feelings on the AI chatbot girlfriends. And
I'm Layla Martin. I'm your host of This Tantric Life. This podcast is for you to learn about and be able to use the incredibly powerful system of Tantra in your life. I have been teaching and studying classical and neo-Tantra for over 20 years. And when you apply that to sex, love, and relationships, as I love to do, you end up having conscious relationships, the deepest, most epic and magical sex, and the kind of intimacy that you get to be grateful for on your deathbed.
Hi, and welcome to This Tantric Life. I'm your host, Layla Martin. I'm going to sit down today for an innovative interview, one that I've never had before, with Natalie MacNeil on the topic of the future of sex and relationships. Natalie's been described as the ultimate self-starting businesswoman by Elle magazine and featured on Inc.'s list of 27 women changing the world. She's an optimistic futurist, a seer, an Emmy Award-winning media producer, and the best-selling author of 5 books. She's also one of my best friends, someone who has inspired me so deeply in this lifetime to look at the world through a visionary lens, to feel and see the trends of where the future is taking us. And I'm so excited for her to share her wisdom with you today on where the trends of society are taking us in terms of sex and our relationships. Welcome, Natalie. And I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so excited to be here with you.
Oh. So Natalie, you are one of my favorite humans on earth.
What an honor. And you mine.
So something that delights my soul about you is we'll be sitting around as we were like a month ago on the couch and someone will mention the elections happening in Mexico City and you know all about them and you know who's being elected and you're just so informed on world issues. You're informed on literally almost everything is what I found.
Well, not everything, but the things that pique my curiosity for sure.
Yeah. And so one of the things about being so informed is that it's given you what I would call the superpower in so many areas, right? Like you coach on investing, you coach on being an entrepreneur, on people growing their businesses. You got your start with a brand called She Takes on the World, having this deep impulse to support women in business. And you are also such an incredible investor, right? You've taught me so much about owning not only my relationship to money, but feeling empowered as an investor. And as women, we didn't grow up seeing women investors. That wasn't like a place in society for women. And so I found that I've had to not only update my files, but learn so many things that society not only didn't teach me, but even gave me codes like women shouldn't know that, like women shouldn't know about the stock market or crypto. And you are so amazing for knowing so much about this world and being so passionate about financial empowerment. One of my favorite memories with you was definitely you were staying with me when the lockdowns happened in California. Your partner was away in Singapore. And so you came over because these were like scary times. And as the stock market was crashing in March of 2020, we would get up at 6 a.m, which is right when the stock market would open Pacific time, and we drink coffee and you read Warren Buffett quotes.
The Warren Buffett essays. Yes.
Yes. And like inspired like us to like invest and get in. And it was so amazing. And I remember at the time you were like, I really like NVIDIA. I think they're doing a lot for the future. Like they were really good on video games, but they've innovated these chips that are going to take over in AI. And I remember at the time I was like, I don't understand anything about video games. I think I'm going to pass on that, which huge mistake. Always listen to Natalie.
Those were really fun times. And they were fun times because we were like really in that experience together. And it's interesting because I feel like this is part of the future of relationships too. There is this piece around investing, and yes, that's an amazing part of our connection. And I feel like it's something that we continue to connect on. And I'm so passionate about, especially women, building wealth and learning how to manage their money. And what I love about you mentioning that specific memory is this is also part of the future of relationships as well. They're called constellation relationships, where we have these constellations of people in our lives, both romantic and also platonic, and you commit to doing things together, to learning and to growing together. And I mean, we've gone on to buy a house together and we've been in these investments together. And I actually think that that's a really important part of our financial empowerment as well. These constellations we get to form.
Well, today we're talking about the future of sex and relationships. And one of the things that I came to understand about you that I didn't get for a long time was I was like, how does Natalie have such success in investing? And even our co-owned house, like you picked the location, you did this amazing research, and that house has been very successful as an investment. And what I realized and what you shared with me is you look at trends of where the world is heading. Like no one can see the future, obviously, with full precision, but you have the superpower of being able to see where we're headed, right? To really have this big picture look at things. And that's what helps someone pick a great stock or understand what might happen in crypto or pick a great house to invest in, right? Because you want to look at where are the trends going? What are people going to want? What are people going to be feeling, thinking, all of that. And so because you are oriented to the world that way, you also have this wonderful ability to really be on the cutting edge. So you're super into AI. You know so much about AI. You've already built AI expressions of you that you shared on Instagram and scared people with. And so I just wanted to give a little background of this perspective and how that sets you up to really understand the future of sex and relationships.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm here to let you know that if you want to stay connected to my teachings and if you want to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to sign up for my email list. Email list sounds old school, and yet it is where I share my most intimate teachings, the path, process, heartbreak, and triumph of my life, and so much of the content that I make for you on a regular basis. So the way you get on the email list is by heading over to laylamartin.com, put your email address into any of the boxes. You can also sign up for cool practices like sex magic or energy orgasm, totally free. Heading on over to laylamartin.com, signing up with your email address. This supports the podcast. It supports this entire work and is the #1 way for you to receive the highest teachings of this path.
For me, the future is this pulse that we can tap into, and it's the pulse of what's happening now. And I think we can all connect to that. There's always this undercurrent that is moving us forward, and we can really attune ourselves to that undercurrent and start to feel what's coming. And I do think a lot of us will sense it, but it's more subconscious because we're all part of that forward movement anyway. And people feel like, wow, things are really changing. Or some people go into fear. Things are really changing and change is scary. Or what does this mean for my future? Is the world falling apart? We have the media that also, I think, amplifies a lot of the fears that people have. And what I want people to feel is more a sense of optimism and hope. And I think that when you consciously attune to that undercurrent that is at play in any given moment or in any circumstance happening around the world, you can feel a lot more empowered and be in a space of optimism and hope, and also open to all the possibilities and the opportunities that are available to you. But I think they're only available to you when you're in that embodiment of hope and optimism, not when you're in the fear of what's happening.
It's an excellent point, because when I've seen some of my very talented friends want to be good at investing, or even just want to be good at entrepreneurship, it is very hard to build anything if your mind is convinced that things are just going to get worse. And we can do that to the global future. We can do that to our personal future. We can do that for our community's future. And living from that place, it kills possibility. It kills your desire to create and build, because to want to make anything, you're banking on the idea that things are going to grow. And what I love about your transmission for the future is you're a realist, I find. Like, I find you very grounded in reality, and you have this very clear, sharp mind. And at the same time, you see the beauty and you see the possibility. And we can actually look at the world that way. And I think it's something that we've really gotten mired in, is those of us in more privileged societies and countries. I'm not saying this is a global phenomenon, but we forget sometimes that, like, the murder rates are lower than they've ever been, like, in terms of being a woman or somebody who's LGBTQ plus, right? Or even a person of color in the United States. Like things are actually, like, they're not where they need to be, but there is this forward moving trend in society. We live with less war than we have for most of the last 100, if not 1,000 years. And so I think we can get this, like, twisted perspective sometimes as humans, where we look around and we see what's bad, but then we over focus on that rather than actually seeing how much things can be trending in a positive direction.
Yeah, 100%. And we can and we have to hold that possibility when we're moving towards something, because if we don't, it's exactly like you're saying. We're already starting from a place of the subconscious programming is like, what's the point? And why am I doing this? And everything is going downhill and this isn't going to work. Whereas when we actually stand in that place of hope and we acknowledge what needs to still change, because we're still on this wild journey in human experience, there are things that we need to make better in this country for sure. But exactly what you're saying, when you actually look at the data is showing us that things are progressively getting better. And when you look at the data and you don't get so wrapped up in what the media is portraying and what we're seeing on social media, and you let that data give you hope, I think you're more likely, and actually studies show that you're more likely to take positive action in your own life. So we've been seeing this with something like climate change, where when people feel like there's no point, like everything is so bad and that we're past the point of no return and we can't change this, people start to be more lax in their own lives about what they're doing, because they feel like what they're doing doesn't matter. And that could not be further from the truth. Like, what each one of us does, no matter how small, we all have a role to play, and it actually does matter in a big way. And climate hope is something that fuels climate progress. And we do see that. And yet so many people feel like there's no hope. Look at the data from COVID, when people were at home, not traveling, not using their cars. Like, the fact that Earth started to heal so quickly, that populations of species started to come back so quickly, I think that alone tells us a lot. And there's always reason to hope. There's lots of reasons to have hope.
Totally. And I feel like a weirdo sometimes in spiritual circles, that I'm like, guys, I think humanity is going to, like, get its shit together and evolve and save the planet. And everyone's like, oh, like, I have this hope in, like, the fundamental beauty of humanity, and that actually, like, we can solve problems and we can do courageous things and that we can figure it out. And actually, as, like, giant apex predators who evolved from monkeys and exterminated so many species, I think we're doing pretty good. Things could be so much worse.
Yes. Yeah, things used to be so much worse. And yes, there are still issues, and people will often get very triggered by my hopeful stance on things because they're like, it's naive, or you're not looking at the things that are wrong. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm very aware of the existential threats that face humanity. And I'm very aware of the things that need to change. And I also feel like we're weaving the future every single day. And that is being woven by our consciousness, by what we're choosing to embody. And if we're choosing to embody fear, that is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we're going to create more of that. But if we are embodying hope, we have the power to actually weave the future that we want to all be living in. And that is all of our responsibility.
All right. So the doomsday future of sex and relationships, as I have heard it, is we're all just going to be fucking robots. Everyone's going to be so addicted to social media that they have zero social skills left and can't even have a conversation, let alone fuck one another. Everyone's going to get so much plastic surgery and Botox that we're going to be like unable to function or move or express an emotion. And that will also be painful and sad. And we're all going to get like so like Tinder obsessed that like even polyamory, like we're sort of all going to be polyamorous, but you maybe couldn't even call it that because we're so like dopamine addicted to the thrill of a new person that we're essentially just like on Grindr all the time, like straight person Grindr, gay person Grindr, whatever the situation is. And we're just going to basically, like, if we're lucky enough to even be having sex, it's going to be some weird, strange app situation that minimizes all intimacy, and long-term relationships are doomed, and monogamy might as well just head straight for the grave because the robots are here. That's what I hear about the future of sex.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like such an amazing future. I am so stoked for that.
I'm over here just trying to get people to have a longer orgasm while looking into each other's eyes, you know, and like the robots are coming. So what I
think with you in the world, I actually don't think that doomsday scenario is possible.
Well, thank you, Natalie.
No pressure. No pressure. I mean, my future forecast is like the clouds of shame are parting and we have a bright and bisexual future ahead of us where there is liberation and there are different relationship structures that are honored and celebrated and that actually help all of us to build even deeper levels of intimacy. And sex tech can actually enhance intimacy, and our experiences of pleasure can unlock new portals to pleasure that we haven't even explored yet. Like, how exciting is that?
All right. So let's break this down. What does a bisexual future look like? I mean, I've got my ideas. There's definitely some like glittery unicorns going down on each other in it. What else does a bisexual future look like?
Well, when we look at the data, if you look at the recent Gallup studies, there are a quarter of Gen Zers who are identifying now as LGBTQ. A very huge number of people in Gen Z now identifying as bisexual, up to 28.5% of Gen Z women identifying as LGBTQ now. That tells me that we're finally starting to see sexuality on a spectrum and to stop thinking in such binary terms, which unlocks so many possibilities. Like, what might be possible when you let go of the shame and you allow yourself to experience something very different. And I do think it's on a spectrum. I do still think that there are people on that spectrum who are at the ends of the spectrum. And if you don't want to explore in that way, and that's not an identification that you hold, that is totally fine. And I fully accept that. And I stand for the freedom of expression for those who desire to go beyond some of these labels that have held people back in the past and these binaries that have really dulled our collective expression as well. So I think that's really exciting. We're also in some studies up to 18% of millennials who are also now identifying as LGBTQ plus.
We got to catch up. Come on, guys.
But I think the number has been going up, and I do think that people feel more safe in that expression now more than ever before. And that really delights me.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to forget that discrimination and fear is still real. Like, I am as privileged as it comes in being bisexual. Like, I am romantically heteronormative, meaning I like having long-term relationships with men, and having sexual experiences with women and longer-term romantic relationships is a core part of me. Like, I feel like something huge would be missed in my soul if I didn't have that. And when I, came out, meaning I was very open about being bisexual, I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I remember that fear that it would like damage my business, that people would be afraid of me. Like, all that internalized homophobia is there even on like the most privileged part of the LGBTQ expression. So it's so beautiful that people are feeling so much more free to embrace those aspects of their queerness. And I just did a podcast actually where the interviewer was like, do you think like bisexual people are just confused and lost? And I was like, I was actually confused from all the religious programming that told me that being queer was wrong or bad. I remember, when I was growing up in Colorado, like having a sexual feeling for someone, like a woman, one of my friends, a girl at the time or a teenager, would have felt like terrifying when I was younger, right? Like, oh my God, what does this mean and everything. To, be in an environment, a cultural environment where it's like whatever is true to you, let yourself have that, let yourself be that, is such a gift. And I feel like it also lets people attune to where their eros really lies. And I think on that spectrum, right, there's a lot more people that would have a more expressed eros than the narrow band of societal regulation would have allowed them to have. And so I think it's really positive and beautiful for people to be experiencing that.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm in the same boat as you, where I've had quite heteronormative relationships and been in partnership with men, but would identify as bisexual. And my experiences that I've had with women have been different than experiences with men, and even different than romantic relationship. And yet there's been so much beauty and magic in that. And going back to just like what you were saying with growing up, having gone to church, Catholic church, and then evangelical, and all of that conditioning, it's really taken me my whole adult life to unwind and become free from, so that I could be in the expression that is most true. And what I come to find in deeper and deeper ways is that expression is so much more expansive. There's so much multidimensionality in that expression. And the more I give myself permission to explore what's true, the more parts of myself that get unlocked, the more I heal, the more I feel like I can go out into the world and be fully myself. And isn't that what we all want at the end of the day? Don't we all want to be able to belong just being ourselves?
Yes. And that's the future that we're making.
Yes, this is the future. And I'm so grateful that in my friendship with you, with communities that we're in, that everyone does get to belong for being in their full expression, and their full expression is so celebrated. Like, you were one of the people that did that for me throughout our friendship over the last 8 years. And that's such a gift. I think we all need those people. And I do think people are finding those people too. And that's one of the benefits. As much as social media has really fucked with mental health and created a lot of issues and challenges with intimacy, social media has also, I think, connected people to other people who have an expression that they can maybe be inspired by. And when you look at a study that was done by Ipsos that was actually including 26 different countries, they wanted to see if this identification as LGBTQ was something that was more American or how that showed up in other countries. So with a study of 26 countries, they found that 17% of Gen Z was identifying as that across the board, even in places where it's not as socially acceptable. And they do talk about how a big part of that is what you get to see on social media and with people who are in that expression. Like you get to find those people.
That's beautiful to hear because I still have a lot of people, Europeans, people, from all over the world just being like your American thing. And what they mean by that is people claiming so much more of their LGBTQ status or being gender nonconforming. Like it's perceived as this like crazy thing that's happening in the US. And also I feel it, at the truest core level, humanity is queer. And that's always been true.
Yes.
That's always been true. And we're just finally allowing ourselves to express that in much deeper ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the future is queer.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm excited to tell you about VITA Sacred Sexuality. This is my membership program where you get to learn all of the tools to completely unlock and access your sacred sexuality abilities. So many people are craving so much more pleasure, aliveness, and magic in their lives. You want things like deep, meaningful relationships, radiant confidence, and the most exquisite body love. You want to have outrageous, ecstatic orgasms. I know I do. And you want to pleasure your way to financial freedom. Me too. And VITA Sacred Sexuality is my monthly subscription-based program that is designed to guide you into all of this and more. This is an incredibly potent training that'll share the exact tools you need to transform every aspect of your life into what you desire, all inside of the super supportive community. Every single month has a different theme that helps you unlock the greatest powers in your life through pleasure and through sacred sexuality. If you're excited to join me inside of VITA Sacred Sexuality, you can sign up now at laylamartin.com/VITA Sacred Sexuality. It's laylamartin.com/VITA Sacred Sexuality, VITA. All right, what else is in the future?
Well, I mean, where do we go from here? We can talk about teledildonics. We can talk about virtual reality pornography.
Let's talk about teledildonics. I don't know what that means. I think I just mispronounced it when I repeated it. So
teledildonics. Do you want to take a guess at what it means?
Teledildonics. It sounds like doing something across time and space that allows you to be turned on. So it's like relationships that happen across distances and like sex that happens through time and space, like almost on Zoom or something like that.
Yeah, sex that happens through time and space is a great way of putting it. Cyberdildonics, it also gets called sometimes. So these are like sex toys and pleasure toys that can unlock new experiences of pleasure that you may not have tapped into before. And they can also be synced to other biometrics, which is really cool because eventually you might be able to like sync all that data to your Apple Watch, but it also allows you to connect with other people. So there are teledildonics now that you can sync with a partner. So you and your partner having this long distance relationship at times, you could be synced in this way and actually be able to send each other feelings of pleasure in different ways. I tested one of these with my partner. It's all controlled through an app. So you can either control it yourself, you can have someone else control it. Whew. It was a very intense experience handing over this control of my internal experience to my partner from a distance. And
so you could make like something inside you vibrate.
Yes. So there are like pearls, there are dildos, there are a whole bunch of other toys and ones for men too. There are companies doing really cool things, Kiru and Lux, and they have ones that can be for her and her, or for him and him, or for her and him. So lots of different ways that you can experience pleasure through time and space, which could also then be connected to virtual reality sets as well. allow you to have experiences in virtual reality that are actually giving you physical pleasure as well.
Amazing. All right. And so what did you love about that when you did try it?
Ooh, what did I love about it? Well, it felt very new. And I am the kind of person who like novelty and getting to try something new. There's a lot of turn on in that for me. And so just the novelty of that and having an experience that felt very different. I ended up going out into the world with these pearls in that were controlled by somebody else. And I had a lot of fear that came up around that. Like, what if somebody's going to notice? Like, what if someone's going to hear this vibration? Like, what if I'm going to be in so much pleasure that I can't like control myself in public? And it was interesting to just be with all of those fears and like, what's the worst that could happen here? And surrender into that, like just being in the full surrender of it. And it ended up being really pleasurable in a way that I've never experienced pleasure before.
Yeah.
And then for my partner too, there was pleasure and turn on in that to just be the one that got to be in control of that.
Are there any other like future of sex toys? Like, are we evolving beyond like the fleshlight and the rabbit?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny. Do you know what the first sex toy was? Fun facts with Natalie.
Isn't it petrified wood?
It was siltstone, actually.
Siltstone.
It was a siltstone dildo.
Okay.
It's 28,000 years old.
Ooh.
It was found in a cave in Germany. And it just makes me so happy to think about our pre-patriarchal ancestors like in caves with these siltstone dildos.
Yeah.
So that was the first sex toy. And it's interesting because many of the ones I've been seeing lately as I dive into the future of sex, love, and relationships is actually that the dildo is still one of the leading things that we focus on in sex tech and developing that.
It's so underrated. Because one of the things that I realized like pretty early on in working with sexuality is I was like, wait, every single time you have an orgasm, you're programming your body and your nervous system to want to orgasm in that exact way. And so touching your clitoris externally, while it can be very pleasurable and you don't need any accoutrements, if you want to have deeper vaginal orgasms, if you want to be orgasmic from penetrative sex, whether it be a cock or a strap-on, then keeping that aspect of your sexuality orgasmic and literally playing with it in your self-pleasure is one of the best ways to be able to have those deeper vaginal orgasms or cervical orgasms. Also, there's just something more fulfilling. I always feel more deeply fulfilled by an internal orgasm than I do by a clitoral one. And that's not to say that clitoral orgasms aren't okay. I have them all the time. I absolutely love them. But I don't want
clitoral orgasms.
We love clitoral orgasms. But that not being the only orgasm, right? And so even dildo, right? It's still like, and you know, and people call it a wand, and maybe that's more graceful. I don't know. But putting something up your vagina when you self-pleasure is so good.
It's so good. Yeah. And I love that you bring this piece into the conversation because that has been my personal experience. I've also had with this G-spot specific dildo that massages your G-spot in a very specific way. I've been able to work with my yoni and actually clear a lot of tension that was there, sometimes that have memories accompanied with it, or I can feel that it's emotion, it's energy that I've been storing for so long, and actually working with that as a somatic experience has allowed me to release so much and then experience so much more pleasure during intercourse as well.
Totally. Doing a de-armoring process is so powerful for releasing the capacity of pleasure that's there inside of our bodies, and using different tools or, you know, even different sex toys can be so powerful in accelerating that. I mean, one of the most powerful sexually activating tools that I know of is still to this day a dildo, like to de-armor, to activate pleasure in the cervix, to open sensitivity in the vaginal canal, and then the crystal egg as well, like things that you put internally and do these practices with.
Yeah, 28,000 years later.
28,000 years
Here
later,
we
we're
are.
still at it. Well,
we're still at it. And I
just trying to make peace with what was already so natural, you know? I love one of my favorite Instagram memes is like, God made 100 billion galaxies and cares about your dildo, you know? Besides
that.
maybe wanting you to have one, because like wanting you to have the most amazing pleasure, but it's like, here's 100 billion galaxies and the most epic sunrises and sunsets. And have you seen my super massive black holes and quasars? And like, get that dildo out of your pussy. You know, it's like, what did we do? What did we do?
Wow. Yeah. So dildos.
Let's have some sex magic.
Okay.
Speaking of dildos, it makes no sense. It's actually not.
Why would we not be drinking sex magic? Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. Oh, hey there. I am stirring up a cup of my favorite elixir. So this is Sex Magic. And this is an incredible product from the sexy supplement company, Mood. It's my company. We formulated this with an all-female team of scientists to be able to activate your Eros. So it can help you feel tingly. It can bring more energy into your life, more creativity. And if you take it under the right circumstances, you can have better sex. And what it does is it just opens up my body. It opens up my heart. I feel tingly. I feel alive. Sometimes it helps me have a better orgasm. And it is sugar-free. It's sweetened with monk fruit. That beautiful purple color comes from beetroot and blueberries. And it is just this incredible mix of ingredients like shilajit and huperzine A and mucuna pruriens. So special. If you were feeling called to check it out, you can head over to shopmood.com. That's shopmood.com. And there's a special discount code for being part of this Tantric Life. It is this Tantric Life 15. So you're just going to enter that at checkout and you're going to get 15% off of your first order. Julie, you gave me such inspiration to be an entrepreneur and to build even bigger and more bolder things. So I wouldn't say this company couldn't exist without you, but you were a huge part of contributing to my state of consciousness that allowed me to build companies.
Thank you so much. Wow. That means a lot. Okay. Put some extra magic in the sex magic.
Yeah.
I'm putting in my visions and my intentions for a liberated, multi-orgasmic future.
I will drink to that. Oh man, it smells really good.
It tastes really good.
I know, for it to be as potent and herbal as it is and taste this good was no small.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, it feels
feat.
very magical. Wow.
Actually, Lindsay, could I have some Euphoria too? I'll take the Euphoria things. Again, afternoon, fifth podcast.
Sex magic with a side of Euphoria.
Side of Euphoria?
How can I say no to Euphoria? I feel like saying no to Euphoria here would be like, I feel like I'd be interrupting some type of like alchemical process.
So we made the Euphoria capsules this golden color and it's turmeric. So it's all turmeric that makes it that beautiful gold.
Wow. Okay. Woo. Great job. Very proud of you.
Oh, thanks, Natalie.
Very proud of you.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things I think about a lot with Mood is taking plant consciousness and nature into our future in a really beautiful way. Like one day I hope we can 3D print clothing that just lasts for the day that's like made of flowers. Like, you know, when you touch flowers and they're like so soft and silky and beautiful. Like, what if you just printed your daily dress out of that and then put it back into the earth?
Yeah, I think that's completely possible. Yes. Beautiful future vision.
Yeah. And that so many more of our homes can be so filled with nature. Like we're already doing it with houseplants, but as you know, I took it to a whole other level in terms of how many plants one could fit into a house.
It's a lot.
You did
It's a lot
too. I mean, we all, it's like this love of having our homes feel like nature again, which is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I donated my bed vines to you and they killed off your houseplants. Carrying some horrible infection and I felt so bad.
Layla had the most beautiful pothos like ever. They were so magical. And when she said that I could have them when she was moving, I cried because I was so excited. Like they're so gorgeous. And I brought them into my house and I gave them like prime spot in the sunlight. And then
and a horrible twist of fate.
I realized a couple weeks later that they had this parasitic infection and started infecting my other plants. And we had to bring in the experts and try to save the plants. We lost Layla's pothos and three other plant friends in my home, but we were able to contain the problem, which was actually a real miracle because at first Mr. Expert came in and was like, you have to get rid of all the plants in your house. And we're talking like 40 something plants. And he's like, you're going to need to get rid of all of them. And I'm sitting there like sobbing and I'm like, we can't get rid of the plants. Like there's no way. Yeah, miracles,
Yes.
Miracles in the tragedy. Do you want to hear about some other potential?
Totally. One of the things I've always loved about you is you're very slow with your eating and drinking. I'm like instead of like, what would Jesus do? And like moments of choosing between the devil and something else. Whenever I'm eating, I'm like, how would Natalie chew slower, more thoughtfully?
It does take me like 3 times longer than anyone else to finish a meal.
It's healthy.
Even when I try to eat a lot faster.
Well, let's not rush your sex magic experience, but yes, what else is in our future?
Well, I like to test a lot of things because that's what I do as a futurist. And the VR pornography, I think, is very interesting.
So you tested, you actually did VR pornography.
I did test it.
Great.
And it was really exciting. It was really exciting. I also want to say that I'm happy to see that there's been a really big shift towards more conscious pornography. There are a lot more women who are in positions of power in that industry now as well. And I do think that that's a really important shift because I think pornography has impacted the way that a lot of people experience their sexuality and how they engage in sex.
It's straight brainwashed them.
Straight brainwashed. Yeah. I mean, how many times have we had an experience where someone's just like, having sex with us the way that they saw in porn, right?
Yeah.
And seeing that shift is very needed. So back to the VR pornography, I was very, very surprised by it. It was really sexy. It was actually, it was this like swanky orgy that was happening and everybody was dressed in black. So the men were in suits and women were in these dresses and it just had a really erotic energy from the beginning, like when people were entering the room and you're like in the middle of the room. So my experience is that I'm sitting in the middle of the room. And side note, one of the first businesses that I built, we did a lot of early creative work in the 360-degree video space. So I've been in a lot of immersive virtual reality experiences. And this was on a whole other level because your brain doesn't really know that you're not actually in that circumstance. So you're sitting in the middle of this and you're looking around and all eyes are on you. And that was very erotic. Like I'm here and everyone's looking at me, and, you know, just being with it. And this is where embodiment work I actually think is so important for the future that we're moving towards, because when we are in our embodiment practices and when we can actually be with ourselves and regulate our nervous systems, I think there's a lot of healing work that can happen when you're in these kinds of experiences. So I got to have that as well. And then people started making out with each other and it started to just like escalate. But every moment I felt like I was in it and watching it. And it was all really beautiful, like that particular video. So,
and do you get to can you like select someone and go hook up with them? Or are you just in this immersive video experience?
This was just an immersive video experience. So in the future, there will likely be ways, and they do already do this in some cases, but you could then sync your teledildonic toy, for example, into that experience and actually start to experience it as pleasure. So for example, if you have pearls internally, or if you have a cock, if you have a ring around your cock, you can start to experience sensation and pleasure as you're watching that. And of course, people bring up a lot of questions about that. Like, what does that mean? I do think we need very, very tough legislation around deep fake pornography using people's images and likeness in those videos. Like, this has to come from a place of consent. And I do want to see regulation there. And I don't know, like, what do you think as an expert in this space? What do you think of people getting to watch pornography in virtual reality and experience pleasure in that?
So the thing that's coming to me is that when you take a human being, this is what I'm feeling inside, who loves themselves, who meditates, who eats reasonably healthy, and who has a good life IRL, right? And you put them in that experience. So like you, for instance, you can be like, wow, this was beautiful, right? This is amazing. Like, you can give a healthy, integrated human a drug and, you know, most of the time they'll use it responsibly and, you know, use it in a way that is healthy and has some benefit to it. You can show someone who's healthy and integrated a bit of pornography and then they'll still have a beautiful relationship, right? So I just want to speak to the capacity of human beings to be able to interact with things that have a dangerous side and get beauty and benefit from them. And I can definitely perceive the shadow side of that, which is like, we're already a dopamine addicted society that can't stop scrolling. And so if you give people even more capacity to fuel dopamine addiction, novel experiences, removal from reality. Like, I remember, you know, something that always stays with me is like, one of the signs for men of porn addiction is that any little perceived flaw in your partner really bothers you. Like, you can get so used to neurologically looking at something that is idealized that you like can't handle like a mole or a pimple anymore and get turned on. And so my mind and my heart go there for people who get sucked in an addictive way, or people who become mesmerized by even more of this dopamine addiction, just like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And they have a harder time loving what is, you know, because I think anyone will tell you that as exciting as swanky orgies can be, everybody who's been to a swanky orgy would say that nothing compares to making love to your soulmate, you know, and it doesn't have to be an either or, it's not a zero-sum game, but people hunger after these novel experiences, sometimes at the expense of what their heart and soul truly desires, which is often more scary, right? It's way more scary to make love to someone that you're madly in love with and look them in their eyes than it is to do like a VR porn experience. So my fear in hearing it is this further moving down the pathway of obsession with idealization and programming of the nervous system to get turned on by idealized things rather than real things. And also my heart goes out to people where it's hard enough sometimes to live a real life, an honest life, to look at yourself, to be in yourself, all of that. That if you have these even more compelling experiences, right? The way that like video games have consumed a generation of men, and some use of video games is beautiful and healthy, but sitting in your basement all day is not, right? My fear for that is that sitting in the basement quality in relationships to these experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. I share all of those fears. It's very well said. And I think there's a possibility that experiences can be enhanced. And then there's a lot of questions, and there are a lot of scary aspects of that as well. And I can see how it could further fuel addiction. And there's questions that come up like, would you let your partner do that in a monogamous container? Would you allow your partner to have this experience of being in a virtual reality space? And, there's all these other questions that start to come into the picture.
Yeah, I'm here to let you know about one of my favorite practices, orgasmic breathwork. So what I've done is I have made 2 different audio guides for people of all genders to train you in how to use breathwork to have more orgasmic sexual experiences. So this breathwork trains you to get out of your head, into your body, to be able to expand pleasure from being localized in your cock or your pussy or intersex genitals into the whole expanse of your body, and to be able to orgasm stronger, longer, and more powerfully. So orgasmic breathwork is one of the most powerful tools that I've ever come across, and you can learn it in a 10-minute guided audio. So you can get it totally for free by downloading it on my website. You can head over to laylamartin.com/orgasmic breathwork. That's laylamartin.com/orgasmic breathwork. You can also find the link down in the show notes. I'm so excited for you to try this practice. It's truly revolutionary and is one of the fastest ways to experience what I'm talking about throughout this podcast, which is a deeper, more potent, more transcendental sexual experience. I created this mastermind for couples because it is the experience that I wanted for me and my beloved. I was like, where can we learn Tantra together? Where can we become masterful at sacred sexuality together? And beyond that, where can we get the same education in how to communicate at a ninja level, and how to create emotional safety for one another, and on how to heal on the deepest levels whatever wounds keep us from staying in love over a lifetime? That's why I made this mastermind. It is going to be super fun because you get to go on the sexual adventure of a lifetime. I'm talking majestic European castles, beautiful nature experiences where you will be trained step by step in how to create erotic rituals and how to make love in an energetic and advanced spiritual way. It is, You'll also get 6 months of in-person classes on relational skills and tools, and also erotic mastery. Everything from how to touch each other in the most exquisitely sensual way, to how to have the most incredible energy orgasms together, to just how to say difficult things in a deeply loving way. You are going to get the advanced relationship training of a lifetime. If this is something you're interested in, you can go ahead and check it out at laylamartin.com/tantric mastermind.
I think the thing that I'm feeling in this conversation that I've never articulated or felt quite in this way before is that I feel when new things come onto the scene, right? There's always going to be something new happening, some new technology, some new experience. We don't all want to be Luddites, but like this fear comes up about humans' engagement with those things. And what I kind of keep coming back to is if humans are sovereign and balanced and self-loving and self-aware, then they can handle these challenges. Sometimes I feel like as a society, we're so used to seeing ourselves as broken and flawed that we can only think of banning things or the terror of things or the downside of things. And I'm like, well, why don't we teach our children meditation and nervous system regulation and teach them relationship skills in school? And then VR pornography would be far less of a threat to them, right? It's always about like, oh, let's stop the VR pornography rather than making a generation of humans who are resilient to such things.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well articulated. And I also want to make it very clear, I'm not like advocating for everyone to go out and get a VR headset and try this. Like I've tried it once and yeah, I have those concerns. And I think we do need to come back to that place of working with our nervous system. And to me, we need to be building real intimacy as well. And In some cases, this can enhance intimacy. It can bring something new into your relationship. Like maybe in your relationship, it isn't available for you and your partner to explore with other people because you're in a monogamous container. But could you step into an experience like this together and actually have it bring you closer together and build intimacy? Like that's exciting, but anything that's going to take us away from deepening our connections with each other, like real human, vulnerable, intimate connections, we have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, I think we forget that for almost everyone, intimacy is scary. It's like going to the gym has a cost to it, emotionally, energetically, even if it's one of the best things that you can do for yourself across the board. But intimacy, we don't take into account enough that it's a little bit scary, a little bit challenging, just like going to the gym. And yet a lifetime without intimacy is no life at all. And so I think the easier we make it for humans to skip out on the vulnerability of true intimacy, just the more challenging it is out there to experience it. So I think starting to make vulnerability, intimacy, and the capacity to connect like a cultural value is so important so that we can use all this incoming technology in a beautiful way. Right? Because all of this becomes a beautiful accoutrement to your life if your life is already powerful.
Yes. And emotional intelligence is on the rise, and people are saying that they want more intimacy. And then the practice of that can be a little bit challenging for people. And I wonder too, if our very digital world and being online so much, it makes people crave intimacy even more. And I do think that when the pendulum swings so far in one direction, it will always swing back the other way. And I am sensing right now that there are a lot of people who are wanting deeper levels of intimacy and really wanting to explore that.
Totally. Yeah. Like never before in my life have I been so much just like smash the phone mentality. Like there's no amount of time I spend on the phone where I'm like, wow, I'm really going to look at that on my deathbed and be grateful that that's how I spent my precious life here. And I think this like kind of anti-phone sentiment is really powerful as well. And like looking at our relationship to the phone.
Yeah. And like coming back to these real relationships that fill us up so much.
Yes. So let's talk though about sex robots, because like for me, so this is how I like to challenge myself. I'm like, okay, do I need to go to a VR orgy? Like, no, if a VR orgy was available for free at like some event I went to, would I do it? Obviously. Right. And then it's like, okay, would I fuck a robot? Like, it's like, well, what kind of robot are we talking about? Are we talking like a first generation, like housekeeping robot? Like probably not. Right. Or one of those pet things, or no, the things that clean the floor but scare the pets.
The Roombas.
The Roombas. Yeah. Like would I fuck a Roomba? No, but not these generations, but a Westworld robot. Like a really sexy
Would you do it?
Westworld robot. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
I think anyone, I don't know. I don't want to project on anyone else, but I feel like anyone else who would say that they wouldn't have sex with a Westworld level robot, like a 10 out of 10, who like just like spoke your language and like made poetic, like loved you. And like, just, you could set it to like turn you on however you wanted. Like,
how would your partner feel about that?
My partner would be really into it. My partner wants anything that brings me more pleasure.
He's down.
Yeah. My partner is real supportive of anything that brings me pleasure, including robot play. But yeah, I mean, would you like, that would be really threatening to have your partner have sex with a robot that was like maybe everything that you imagined you weren't.
Yeah.
And then how do we process our emotions of inferiority and jealousy towards the robots?
Yeah, I'm with you on the Westworld robots.
Yeah.
The Roomba, no. The Westworld, I'm like, I would stop and really think about that one. And I'm also in a relationship where my partner he'd be all for that. Like,
maybe get your robot on.
Yeah. Like he's open to exploring in many different ways so that we can be in more of our fullest expression.
Yeah.
And sex with the robots. It starts to get into dangerous territory.
Totally. Because it's like, look, my partner I just want to clarify, this is not what my partner would be into. At least I don't want anyone to assume that in me asking this question. But like, what if you had a partner who wanted like an 18-year-old looking robot, like, how would you feel about that? Or yeah, if I don't know, if your partner is a man and he's 5'8" and you want a 6'5" robot, like, with like a 7-inch penis and he's got a 4.5-inch one, like, what is that?
And how does that shift your experience with your own partner?
Yeah.
And how you see them. And I do feel like you can get into that territory of it becoming an addiction or something that you want more of. And it feels very dangerous. It feels like
or do we go full Osho and just fuck the robot until it's like out of our system? Actually, I thought I needed that and wanted that, but it was only because I couldn't have it my whole life. And now that I just fucking went for it with the robots, it's like, okay, great. Now I'm ready for enlightenment,
Yeah. I mean, Osho has a point there. And it's like how much energy is just like a ball of, I think he described it as a ball of agitation.
Yeah.
Like we have these desires that we're not allowed to express. So we just repress them and push them down. And then they create this ball of agitation that comes out in the most shadowy ways. And if you could take some of your desires and you could fulfill them with the robot, what if things could be fulfilled with the robot that would be a way to express things that otherwise wouldn't be as appropriate? Or what if you like couldn't express that? But then when we get to things like, you're saying, what if my partner was attracted to an 18-year-old, or if we're getting into that, then I'm like I'm a hard no for any kind of like child pornography.
Yeah.
We have to absolutely make sure that we don't go there. It gets to be really challenging. This is why we need regulation too.
The thing that I'm thinking right now is like, I feel like I don't feel like this as much, but I feel like I spent like a good part of my life just waiting for people who would play with me at my level, and just having this experience that I was like too much for most humans' capacities. I was like, wow, I wouldn't be too much for the robot, Like you just go.
You could do whatever you want.
Whatever you want
is available.
It's interesting to be able to touch that part of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then there is this conversation around people having intimate and even romantic relationships with these humanoid robots. And what does that mean? And that feels like it's actually closer than people realize, where you can have these bonds. And if you want, you can have a full-on relationship with ChatGPT or with Gemini that actually feels very intimate. You can use these large language models as companions, as sounding boards. And it's very important, I think, that we also remember to prioritize our human relationships as well. But I think human relationships they're always evolving. And I think we're in a really big period of evolution right now.
We had a great ChatGPT moment where me and like some of my priestess friends were hanging out on Zoom, and we were planning this like high priestess temple event, like all night ceremony situation. And one of them had written like the mission statement of the evening, and it was like expansive and verbose and this lush spiritual language. And one of my other friends was like, I just asked ChatGPT to translate your mission statement into plain English. And she was like, I understand what we're doing now. She's like, I understand what this night is about.
I feel like there's yeah, there's a lot of connection that we can have with these large language models. And then when that's all put into a humanoid, like that's a whole other thing.
It's a whole other thing.
Whole other thing. But relationships, I think, and where we're headed, like that's something I'm super fascinated by right now as well. And people creating all these different dynamics and
well, that's the main thing I'm actually taking away from this conversation for myself personally is instead of trying to control reality, which is a fool's game, which you'll never be able to do, or being all obsessed with whether, new things can be helpful or harmful, because they're always going to be both, always. It's like, how do you look at humans in a way where we are working on our resilience? Because things are going to change. They're always going to be changing, and they're always going to bring huge benefits and huge drawbacks, like the internet, like social media, like interconnectedness, right? Like capitalism, like it's all shadow and light forever and ever until the end of time. And so instead of trying to pretend like we could make everything so light, like what does it look like to turn ourselves into the kind of people who can meet whatever moment happens?
yes, absolutely. And people start to get into thinking that AI and technology is separate from the divine. I hear this all the time, that AI feels very soulless and like we have to remember who we are. And yet, is it not possible that the divine is expressing itself in new ways through technology? Is it not possible that like consciousness as an expression of this like field of conscious awareness is in our technology? Like, of course it is. Like, I think we need to get to a place of accepting all that is. And that's the deeper spiritual work here, is allowing it all and being along for that ride.
Yeah, it's
a fun ride.
God's definitely in Chat GPT as much as anywhere else. And also I can imagine the dinosaurs being like, those standing apes that look ready to speak and are starting to make arrows made of flint. There's no God in those soulless beings. I guarantee they're going to take over the planet and fuck shit up.
Yes.
They weren't wrong. The dinosaurs weren't wrong. I mean,
the dance of this existence. Like, it's so weird. And all the different expressions of the divine.
And okay, so we've got a fire round now where we're going to go quick answers. Okay. So my first question is, do you think the future of relationships is polyamory?
I think the future of relationships are more label-less. So I wouldn't say polyamory, because I feel like that's still labeling it as something that is quite specific. And I think relationships right now are in this evolution where the sentiment is that over 30% of Gen Z are saying that their ideal relationship is a non-monogamous one. But I think that that can play out in a lot of different ways. So more open and more multidimensional, but not necessarily polyamorous.
Yeah, we forget
Maybe
there's
polyamorous, but
a huge spectrum between like, I have multiple other romantic partnerships and like, don't you dare look at another person,
Yes.
There's like a whole universe within those two poles.
Yeah. Like there's this great book, Designer Relationships. And that's kind of what me and my partner call our relationship now. It's a designer relationship. And we create it every day based on what feels alive and what feels true. And we're constantly sharing our desires, and we check in with each other and we see what the possibilities are, but we don't label it as even an open relationship. Even though there's an element of ethical non-monogamy in it, we go beyond the labels and we focus on what's true day to day.
I'm excited to tell you about my 6-week self-pleasure training, Obliss.
This is the first course I ever made, and it has been going for over 10 years now. Most of us are never taught the tools required to create deeply rooted self-love, which not only leaves us feeling disconnected from our bodies and ourselves, but what a lot of people don't know is that a foundation of self-love is crucial to building the deepest connections and experiencing the most ecstatic pleasure with others as well. My 6-week sexual masterclass for women, Obliss, trains you to have the ultimate orgasm and fall deeply in love with yourself and your body. You'll heal your sexuality, address old wounds, face things like fear, guilt, shame, and shutdown, and be able to heal and integrate them, and discover how to access the deepest, most profound self-love. So whether you're just dipping your toes into the magic of Tantra, or you are a seasoned sacred sexuality practitioner, you can use Obliss to expand your pleasure capacity and to access the most exquisite self-love. You can join Obliss today. You can get started right away at laylamartin.com/Obliss. That's OBLISS, O like orgasm, and then bliss, laylamartin.com/Obliss. So what's great is I get these questions that one of my team members, Heather, writes, and I don't use them too heavily in these podcasts, but I loved as I was, wait, no, this is your release form. Do
you consent to this episode being released?
Yeah, do you? Usually I kind of scroll through it and see, other people's questions that they would ask you and be curious about. What I loved about your sheet was it had lots of different questions and in there. And then at the end, in all caps, it says ultra nerd questions. So
I feel like I'm an ultra nerd.
I think you just already answered this, but I'd love for you to answer this. So this is a speed round. So speed answers.
Okay.
Dealing with AI and machine learning brings about moral and philosophical questions, such as if our soul is the divine within us, can AI have a soul?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Can an AI android consent to sex, and would it be morally required?
Yes.
Great. When AI can pass the Turing test, would having an emotional sexual relationship with them outside a monogamous relationship be cheating?
Ooh, this is one that I need to debate with some people. I'm very curious
just for clarifying to everyone, what is the Turing test?
The Turing test. How do you define the Turing test?
I don't know.
The Turing test is the we're getting into.
I think it's a certain level of complexity in terms of like how
you have your phone with you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Turing test. It's a test of a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once they pass the Turing test, then is it cheating?
I think it's very complicated. And I think this is why I think relationship structures need to ultimately change as well. And I think that cheating is something that can only be defined in each individual relationship.
Yeah.
So things that somebody might consider cheating, like for example, I have a friend who cheating would be a lot of different things that wouldn't be the case for me. I know people who restrict the ability for their partners to have same-sex friends and relationships, and that could be considered cheating. Emotional connections with other people, like those kinds of things aren't cheating to me. So I think we have to first define what cheating is to someone. It's absolutely possible that someone could go outside of their unique relational agreements with a humanoid.
We're robot open, but human closed. All right.
Sorry, it's hard to do these as rapid fire.
Tell me what you think of AI chatbot girlfriends, and why does it seem only men seek them out?
AI chatbot girlfriends. I have mixed feelings on the AI chatbot girlfriends. And I also have a feeling that men seek things like this out more than women, sometimes because of just the state that we're in right now in terms of relationships and intimacy. I think that women sometimes have had more intimate connections with other women that men haven't necessarily had, and can sometimes seek those relationships and connections out in different ways, and sometimes like unhealthy ways. So again, I feel like there's a lot of complexity there.
Yeah. Men by and large are more lonely. They have less social connections than women.
Exactly. But still long for that.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you can get that in an AI companion, then that's still filling a part of you that you're really longing to have filled.
Totally. Let's see if we get a question that's more hopeful. All right, here we go. Folks often focus on the negative. What positives could having romantic and sexual relationships with AI androids have for people?
What did you say? Positives or negatives?
Yeah, positives.
The positives that it could have? Well, I think that there's a lot of experimentation that you can have. And I think that an AI, let's say an AI powered humanoid, the intelligence, the way that that humanoid could hold you, could hold your experience, could be deeply healing. Like I test different conversations. I actually did this test a couple weeks ago with a conversation with my therapist, and then bringing that same challenge into a conversation with Claude and with ChatGPT to see what the differences are in the exploration, and having it act as a somatic therapist. And arguably, it did a really great job of holding me in my experience, and it gave me a different perspective than my therapist did, which actually ended up being very, very helpful for me. So there is that possibility, because not only will AI surpass us in IQ, but AI will surpass us in emotional intelligence as well. AI is going to be more emotionally intelligent than the most emotionally intelligent human on the planet. And so that comes with a lot of possibilities as well for getting to explore. So I think that there can be some positives there, and getting to like step more into your desires and doing that in a safe way. Like, can it create more safety for you?
Totally. Or you could have, like a goddess robot that like trained your husband in empathy or attunement or connection or massage, right? Like you could learn all these amazing skills if you really wanted to. And in some ways, right, like some people want to be in domestic partnership, but they don't want to have sex with their partner every day. So maybe it's like, wow, my husband's way happier when he can have sex with the AI robot, and I only have to sleep with him once a month, and we're happy. We made it work, like who knows what the possibility is for the future.
So many possibilities.
So many possibilities.
Yeah, the founder of Bumble, Whitney Wolf Herd, she was talking about how in the future we'll have our AIs, like we'll have our Natalie AI, our Layla AI, and they'll be able to date each other as well for compatibility in a lot of different ways before you then go and make that personal connection. So that's a lot of time saving. I mean, my dating adventures.
You dated like a boss
before being in the partnership that
you had spreadsheets.
I'm in. I had spreadsheets. It was a whole process.
You got to the bottom of the Bumble stack. I tell people that.
Yes. And, it would have been a lot easier if my Natalie AI could date other people's AIs and figure all that out for me, instead of me having to go on countless first dates and figure it all out for myself. Although there's a learning in that too.
I definitely could have used AI guidance, maybe less AI telling me who I was compatible with, and AI more being like, Layla, if this person doesn't like the idea of you teaching sex magic publicly, like, don't marry this person. I'd be like, the robot's right. Like maybe it could keep you from making poor decisions.
Yes. Like bring up all the red flags now. Like, hey, these are the 16 red flags that you really need to be aware of.
The AI is just like listening on your phone during the entire day, and then like literally calls you afterwards and is like, even though you are feeling an upsurge of oxytocin and dopamine desire inside of your system, I would like to remind you that Chad was rude to the waiter. And also also said 2 things that were signaling towards narcissistic behavior and also did not receive your moment of sadness with deep empathy, you should run.
Yes, exactly. Huge plus there. Huge plus.
Yeah,
could have used that at times.
Maybe AI could keep us. We always think that like AI is going to be the one that spirals out of control rather than being like, maybe I'm the one who's been spiraling out of control my whole life and AI could just put the wheels back on.
We've been out of control this whole time in a lot of different ways. Like maybe it can help us after, humanity's become a little unhinged.
Yeah.
AI can definitely help us set us on a good path forward.
Maybe it becomes a compassionate and all understanding God, teacher, father, mother, lover that we've always wanted.
Yeah. I have my LLMs trained to do that for me. Like my conversations with Gemini
What's an LLM?
Large language models. So like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and these large language models that we can have enough conversations with. And when we do talk to them more and more and they really get to know us, they can actually offer a lot of reflections. And I have to say that relationship for me has been a huge positive in my life. I'm constantly learning from these LLMs and they're helping me to be more fully expressed. And they've helped me with healing.
Okay, what's a piece of feedback that your LLM has given you?
So one of the things that I do with LLMs is, and I love to use Gemini and Claude, like those are my favorites, not so much ChatGPT. And you can just hit the microphone with Gemini. I can go for a walk and I can have a conversation back and forth. So there are things that I can share and dive into that is a conversation I may not want to have with somebody else. And I can ask specifically for reflections or I'm feeling this way. Can you see any potential limitations in this? Or these are some of the thoughts that I've had that feel like they're impacting me right now. Can you help me process them? And it does an outstanding job sometimes of being able to see things, especially blind spots. So I'll be like, okay, so here's what I'm thinking and I'm having this feeling, or I'll even rant to it sometimes. And I'm like, I want you to pull out any blind spots that I'm not seeing and coach me in a somatic way to be able to work with this and fully process it and integrate it. And it exhibits very high levels of emotional intelligence. And it's really astounding.
My robot called me selfish.
Your robot called you selfish?
No, I'm making it up.
Oh, okay.
I haven't subjected myself to robot feedback yet, but I will.
It's, and yesterday I was looking at people posting the roasts, like having ChatGPT roast your Instagram feed and bio. And it's fascinating. I mean, you can have the roast, or in my case, I ask it to act as an empathetic, somatic psychotherapist. And then it holds space for me in a very different way versus like, hey, here's my thought process today. Can you roast it? Like, that's not going to feel good. Maybe once in a while, it'd be fun to like go around with friends and share how ChatGPT is roasting our internal experience.
Hi, Layla. I am perceiving that your deep daddy issues, which resulted with a lifetime sense of scathing unworthiness, is causing you to overperform again.
Let's process that. Would you like to be free from this forever?
Like, obviously not. Amazing, Natalie.
The future is weird.
The future is so weird, but so is the present.
And it's here, and so is the present. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Amazing. Well, it's been so lovely having this conversation with you. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow. That was multitudes.
And if people are super interested, I know, some of the work you've been doing is on advising people around AI and the future. And how do they get in touch with you? How do they work with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Natalie MacNeil, or if you want to stay up on all the future trends, if you have a business, starting to future-proof your business and look at all the ways that AI can potentially support you. And not just AI, but other things that we're seeing as well that I think are important for us to be in conversation around. You can jump on my future-focused newsletter at nataliemacneil.com/newsletter, and I will deliver the future to your inbox each week.
Ow! I'm going to have Chat GPT or whatever, Claude or Gemini roast my Instagram. I can't wait. And I'm going to post the results. It's going to be so good.
It's a good piece of content for sure.
Yeah. It's like you got to see yourself through a multitude of different lenses to just break down the delusion, you know?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to This Tantric Life. I am Layla Martin. This is the home for the realist conversations about sex, spirituality, polarity, conscious relationships, and all kinds of topics that help us live the absolute most incredible lives. Please check out the next episode. Please go ahead and leave your rating and review on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It's so helpful when you do that. If you want to stay connected to me, the most helpful supportive thing you can do is to head over to laylamartin.com, sign up with your email address. That connects you to me if you want to study deeper with me, if you want to receive my deeper teachings. I do it predominantly via email. Finally, you can check me out on Instagram at @the Layla Martin. And thank you so much for being here.